Hello and welcome to the Make Dope Shit podcast. It's a series of interviews about making stuff. It's really that simple. Ultimately, I'm just sitting down with a bunch of artists and talking about their craft and whatever they do. This episode is with Phantom. Phantom is a musician, actor, and founder of DYD Publishing. I sat down with Phantom in his home studio to talk about his variety of experience, how he got into performing music, how he got into acting on a soap opera in, I think it was Peru. If it's not Peru, you'll have to listen to the episode. I'm not looking at the transcript right now, so I don't actually remember. But yeah, and his approach to running a label and collaborating with all sorts of artists. So you can listen to Phantom's music wherever you listen to music, or hit him up at DYD Do Your Dance on Instagram. Visit his website at doyourdancedyd.com, or check the description wherever you're listening to this to get any sort of links to his information. So, without further ado, my conversation with Phantom. We'll just get right into it. What have you been up to lately? What have you been working on? What's going on in your life?
Well, as far as what I'm working on, really, as DYD is now growing and I'm really starting to, I guess, make it more of a business and not just an individualistic artist thing, I have really just kind of been finding ways to up the business side of things. So I have different artists on the label, on the publishing company. And now I'm kind of figuring out ways to boost all of our music together, so my music, their music as well, and really diving into what I've noticed mostly is everybody loves visual content. So I can have all these songs out all day, and I released one music video from a song I did in 2016, and then somebody comes up and they're like, "Oh, I love your new song." I'm like, "That's been out for like years."
Yeah.
But visual content seems to be the way to go. So now I'm working with as many people as I can to get as many videos and many photos as I can get done. So yeah.
So we'll get into like kind of some of the newer stuff that you're doing with it, but first, for I guess the folks listening, give me a little bit of an overview of like your model as a record label, because I've always thought you had a kind of unique approach in that I believe what you had said when we kind of first talked about it was your goal with it is to teach artists how to do it themselves. Like that's kind of the purpose of it. So tell me a little bit about DYD and your goals and how it all works.
Yeah, definitely. That is 100% where I kind of came at this. So DYD stands for Do Your Dance. Do Your Dance means to be yourself, do your own thing, do what you were put on this earth to do. And that's kind of the whole goal. So when I got signed to my first label, and as I've seen, like you said, other people get signed to labels, and I kind of saw how the structure worked, I was like, oh, well, this is something I know how to do. I can find a distribution service and get their music out and kind of be done with it. But as I was learning, I was like, I feel like it's going to be more beneficial for not only me, but especially the artist to learn all of the ins and outs. Mm-hmm. So basically my goal is to teach an artist how to run social media, teach them about their performing rights organizations, teach them about the copyrights and all of that kind of work. And I don't ask any money from them. I work with the artists on their contract about what I'm providing to them and what they're gaining, and at the same time teaching them how to, say they wanted to kind of go off on their own and release their own music. They could, but they will see the benefit from going with us and working with a group of people and kind of creating this collaborative space more than just an individualistic, oh, I want to be the best artist to come out of Cincinnati. It's going to be more like, we want to create this more of a Atlanta kind of style or LA kind of style where the whole city kind of gets built up as more people learn how the business works in general. So I think the biggest thing is, not only teaching them those goals, but not signing them for a period of time. So we sign per project. You want to release a single, you want to release an EP, you want to release an album. You're assigned for that specific project, and then we move on. And, you can do something else, you can come back, you can stick with us for every release. It just kind of depends. So, yeah.
So, and kind of the thing that stood out in some of the stuff you're talking about there was the community aspect of it, right? The kind of collective aspect of it. How do you, as somebody who's running a label and working with a bunch of different artists, how do you approach, collaboration and like trying to get folks to work together and bring ideas to the table like that?
So my biggest thing is, I have a bachelor. One of my bachelors is in psychology. So I've noticed that dealing with people on a personable level is always the very beginning step. So, because people's artists, artist names and their music and their style can always fit together. But if people can't work well together, it's not going to work, no matter how, great they sound on a track. So my first goal is to get to know them on a human level of, what are you about? What do you want to go with your music? What are your goals? What do you do for fun? Those kind of things. So once I kind of get that under my belt, I do an introduction based off of the two things that can kind of bring the two different artists in common together.
And so I guess not to kind of derail you there, but while we're on that discussion of like kind of getting to know people, what are the like standout characteristics that you'll notice in somebody, like in terms of their creative ideas or brainstorming? Like what are the things or the elements or the characteristics that you're looking for from a like artistic perspective?
So I think the very first thing before I even move forward with adding them to the publishing company at all is their work ethic. That's the very first thing I focus on, especially with newer independent artists. You get a lot of roller coaster artists is what I call them. They'll work really hard for a while and then they'll fall off and I won't hear from them, or they'll work really hard for a while and then fall off. If I can find somebody who's consistently working and I'm consistently getting responses from them, that's the very first thing. After that, I want to work with somebody who has a future goal. If your goal is, I want to release this and, that's kind of all I really want to do. They don't really have an aspiration to quote unquote make it big. So if they, aren't really interested in performing or they don't want to put themselves out there, then it just doesn't seem like a good, it seemed like it might waste everybody's time for everybody to put that much time into, especially, it takes a lot of time to do this stuff. So I like to work with people who are consistent and have a future goal.
There's a scope on their, on the project other than just, doing one project to kind of do it and to say you've done it right. Having a kind of a greater artistic vision outside of just, one individual thing.
Right. Definitely.
Let's say you've got like a couple of artists that you're working with. What does the process look like for, or here, let me kind of pull everything back a step, maybe with a bit of a clarifying question. Who does a lot of the production and the recording and all that? I mean, for those who don't know, which is probably everybody, because there's no video here, we're sitting in your home studio. Yes. There's a recording booth, a couple feet away from us at this moment. So I'm kind of assuming the answer to that question is you. But I guess just to clarify, like, how does the logistics of it all work, right? Like if you've got an artist that's like, hey, I want to record this track, like what's the logistical process of it look like for getting it made?
So I guess the first and foremost, I am very non-genre specific. So if you work and you're an artist, that's good with me. So that's the first step. Second step is how well you record your music. So if it's a band per se, as you said, we are sitting in a recording booth. I don't have live instruments in here. I mean, I do have a guitar sitting over there, but usually if it's a band, they can send in their stuff. Yeah. But
getting a drum kit in here and kitting it up would be a bit of an endeavor.
Yes, we're on the third floor, no elevator, so that's not going to be as fun. But usually worked mostly with hip hop / R&B / poppy kind of artists. So they'll have some sort of backing track that we can upload into my Pro Tools. So what we'll all do is I have, a plethora of beats that I've gotten from many different engineers in the past and things like that. I'm not so great at making beats myself. I do want to get better at that. But a lot of the times the artist will already have a beat either they bought or they know the person who's the engineer and they bring it in. And then I also work with them on the legality of, okay, if we're going to use somebody else's beat, do they know? Did you get it legally? All of that jazz. So they either come in here and set up and record over Pro Tools, not Pro Tools anymore. I'm on Logic now. Or they will record in their own studios and things like that, send me over each individual track. I'll mix, send them revisions until we get what it likes. And then nowadays I'm starting to work in Illustrator and Photoshop myself to create different album covers. If they don't already have an idea, we'll kind of sit down and come up with one together. Then we talk about release dates and we talk about how the streaming services work. Obviously, like I said, it's a teaching moment where I tell them, streaming services only pay you every quarter. can kind of send you each individual statistic on, who's liking your music, who's playing your music, where are they at, how old are they, what age are they, all of that jazz. And so that's the logistics there.
Gotcha. So then let's say you've got an instrumental that you're working with. Let's say, like, hypothetically, you've got an artist who, they don't have a written verse or like any written material. They've just got like kind of a couple of ideas bouncing around and like a track that they like. Like, what does the process look like to, get the idea down and to grow it into a proper song, right?
So like before the recording process happens kind of area. So like I said, I do like to work with artists who have been working consistently. So I haven't come across that a lot, but I do have, I think maybe once or twice now, and I do have an artist that I'm currently working with where this is their beginning. They've never wrote a song and all of that kind of work. So the very first process is to get their creativity moving. So I want to encourage them and kind of pressure them to put something down. I don't want to step in until you have something on paper, until you have an idea. And when we have an idea, then we work on putting together the lyrics in the way that sound good.
So really quick, not to interrupt again, but I want to kind of take a moment to touch on that, like getting an idea or getting the creativity rolling, as you said. Is there anything in particular that you'll like kind of have an artist do or like certain exercises or stuff like that? Or is it just like go write stuff down? Like what are kind of some of the things that you do to trigger some of that?
So triggering that, I think, is so individualistic. As you know, as being a creator, everybody has some sort of process. So what I do is kind of give my own personal experience. So for me, the best way to trigger my creativity it's usually at night. I'm up here, lights are usually off. Maybe I have a glass of wine and I'm just kind of vibing out. And that's kind of kicks in my creativity. So I'll share that with them. So I'm like, go to a place where you just can feel open, in your mind, to where you can kind of let yourself go and to be you, to do your dance. You know? to just kind of do that. And, maybe it's running, maybe it's, taking a walk, or it could be anything. So when you kind of get to that space where you're, the space you go to when you're having writer's block, even if you haven't had writer's block yet, but the place you go to that can kind of open your mind, open your space. And then once we're there, that's when, I feel like the lyrics can come out and at least some sort of words or an idea of a song or idea of a music video may come first. And then we need to go to the song, or, maybe we come a title and then we need to go to the lyrics kind of thing. So,
And so then what's the process? Like you've got kind of the creativity rolling, you've got the ideas coming out. Like where do you stop the process of, hey, we're just kind of we're just getting whatever ideas we can and start sifting through things and whittling it down into taking it from something that's a little bit more abstract and kind of honing it into a song?
So I think it would be after we have, I guess, a main goal. We have a title, we have what the song's about, we have a beat, we might even have some music video ideas. And then at that point, it's like, okay, now it's time to write. Now it's time to actually put pen to pad and figure this out. And what I've noticed when it comes to working with, especially newer artists, there's two camps of people. There's a camp of people who have the rhythm down and they don't have the lyrics down, or they have the lyrics, but they don't have the rhythm. And kind of identify that as soon as I can to figure out where most of our time is going to be spent. And, if it's the lyrics, if they have a great beat, they can flow all day and, they can listen to songs and kind of stay on beat, and they need to work on lyrics. What I'll kind of do is share, talk to them about artists that they like, and we can kind of go through their music and kind of see, like, the meaning behind, I don't want just plain lyrics. That's I guess another part of the labels. I really look for, not that there's any type of music that doesn't work out, but I like music that the lyrics do matter. So we'll kind of look at that. If it's the beat side, if they need to learn how to stay on beat, that's usually the harder side. And what we do is we sit in here for hours and we keep doing the song over and over until it's on beat. We listen to, practice, listen for that hi-hat, understand where the downbeat happens, understand where the song is going to repeat again, because that is usually a harder piece to get down.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, so with some of that creative process, right, I'll kind of use this to jump off onto some of your own stuff. What do you have any sort of like routines or regular times that you're like, kind of when you mentioned, for you personally, it's, you're up here, you're in the studio, maybe you've got a glass of wine, you're just chilling, you're trying to get into that space. Do you have any sort of like routines or things that you'll do on a regular basis to try and get into that mind space? Or like, what does your like process or effort look like to try and get yourself there?
So I can usually tell that I'm having like this itch to create during the day. Mm-hmm. And during the day, it's like, it's coming on, I listen to music all day, and it almost makes me want to turn on an instrumental and freestyle on my drive or something like that. I'm like, okay, I definitely, I'm in this space. And what I'll do to kind of start to cultivate that a little bit is when I do get home and I do have the time for me is generally, I know it's going to sound a little bit wild, but I generally work from about 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. That's like for some reason, that's just my time. I don't know. As you can see, I can keep it dark in here. It's my bat cave. This is where it all starts to happen. So it's about, 12, it's about midnight, it's about 1. It's time to start getting into the space. First thing I do is I'll come up here and I'll start sifting through the catalog of beats. I'm a person who likes to find my beat first. Before I even have a song idea, before I have any other idea, my first goal is I need to hear some music that will speak to me. And once I get to that beat, it just kind of clicks. It's like, oh, this is the song I'm going to write today. And we'll play that beat over and over, put it on repeat. And then I'll kind of just sit to myself, maybe freestyle a little bit, maybe go through lines that I've kind of written down throughout the day, maybe even go back to previous songs that I may have started but didn't finish, just kind of get into that mind space until I've thought of an idea. Okay, this is going to be what the song's about, and I can kind of move from there. Yeah.
So then is this something that you're doing like every night? Is every night from like, midnight to 3 a.m. you're in here working, or is it more on a feel?
So it used to be.
And I guess, yeah, I'll with the caveat of that you did just have a child recently. So that I'm sure has created all sorts of unique wrinkles in your regular process.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, but he's he's already been up here. I've had him in the booth. I've held him while I've been making music. At one point, there's a video of that somewhere. I can't remember where. That's awesome. My brother, I think, has it actually. But,
shout out Matt.
Yeah, shout out to Matt. So it used to be more prevalent back when I first started, before DUID was an LLC, when it was like, just Phantom rapping and DUID was going to be the overall goal. It used to be every night, midnight, 1 a.m., I am sitting in the booth, sitting in the studio or somewhere, usually in the dark, trying to get it down. But now it's coming to the point where, and, on a positive note, that I'm wanting to build this more than just myself. So that's when it started to be, okay, on this night, I need to look at, running a business. At this night, I need to look at running through social media. This night, I need to look at, what are the new marketing trends that are going on. So it's not always been a creative mode for me anymore. Or maybe I need to work on somebody else's song to kind of mix their stuff. So when I can, I like to do it myself, of course, but now it's been more on the paperwork side of things.
Yeah. How do you feel do you think that has like enhanced those creative sessions? Do you feel like if, you've got now this buildup of ideas, or like, how do you feel like that's affected, having to not be in night after night doing it and only having, let's say, maybe once a week or something like that, where it's creative focused? How do you feel that's affected your process at all?
Honestly, it's made me more excited when I get to do it. Because, there was a point where it was like, all right, I'm doing this every day. Before I had my own studio, it was like, all right, I'm going down to the studio. I think my old studio was out in Blue Ash, and I had to drive up there. It was a good 15, 20 minutes away. It was like, I got to do this. I got to get this song done. I got to sit down. I got to write. And obviously enjoyed it. But now it's at the point where it's like, if I have the time, all in. Or maybe one of my artists reaches out and they're like, I got this song, but I didn't get it all the way finished, but I kind of want you to collab. When I hear that, I'm super excited. All right. So not only do I get to help out this artist, but I get to also write and be on the creative side myself. So it's really just kind of pushed me to take those opportunities a lot more.
And so like on the note of, kind of running your business and doing, like you said, it's been a lot of paperwork lately. I think with anything, right, there's cycles. It's high points and low points of certain things that you need to be doing to push everything forward. But how do you try to balance that kind of stuff? Like, how do you try and make sure that there's enough time for the paperwork and the logistics, and enough time for like the creative expression and like your own stuff as a musician?
Yeah, that has been the ultimate battle, really.
Yeah, it's balance is one of the, I mean, that's something I've been trying to figure out lately too, is like, I will go through these periods of like almost manic work, and it's fine in the moment, right? Like it's like, I'm being busy and I'm happy with it. And then I'll just be like, oh, I need to like hit the brakes here. And I don't know if I know, like I'm clearly past the point where I should have hit the brakes, and I'm like, oh shit, what, slam on the brakes and figure all that out. Like, yeah, it balances tough. Yeah. I'd be curious to hear how what your approach is to it.
So really there was a time where I was like, okay, on this day, I'm working on this artist music. On this day, I'm working on my own music. On this day, I'm working on acting stuff. On this day, maybe I take a break. And, there used to be specific days for specific things. And that worked out for a while until it got to the point where some stuff, there's deadlines. I have a release date. I have to be on set on a certain day. So it got to the point where it was like, okay, I need to, at the beginning of the week or at some point in time, sit down and kind of make a priority list of what needs to get done and what time it needs to get done. And then, it changes week per week, obviously. Maybe this week might be only one thing, or maybe this week, I got to take one thing or two thing, or maybe, it gets to Saturday night and I just need a break. And, I just got to take that time to kind of get my mind space back so I can come into the next week strong. So it's kind of a case by case basis based off of what artists want done and what I can get done. So.
Okay, interesting. And then so with a lot of your music, right, something that's kind of stood out to me is it seems a lot of it is very character driven, right? And the stories that you're telling behind them. And I don't think that that's a coincidence that you also are, an actor and you do a lot of acting work. How do you feel that, being an actor and the whole separate creative endeavor that is, how do you feel that has, or like, what are some things or characteristics of your creative approach to acting? How has some of that influenced like your music and your writing and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of back up a little bit there. And so when I first came into acting, I had already been making music for a while, and I'd already performed and already done a lot of that. But when I started acting, I noticed that my performance changed. I'll kind of go on stage and I'll do more of a show, make it more of a theater than, I'm rapping to the crowd. I want to kind of create a story with my body language and all of that. So that's that. When that kind of hit me, I realized that I need to implement that into the actual creating process, because I felt like it made each song stronger. And especially with, as you know, the way my music, it's not always the same style. So, I'll have a certain theme for a song, which is a normal thing. And what I like to do is kind of create a character for that song. And I think that's kind of how those two tied together is, when you given a character for a show, you can kind of create your own backstory if it's not already given to you, or you can create your own emotional scale if it's not already given to you. And that's kind of where I'm coming at with a song where, what do I want the audience to feel here? This is my music, and this is, what I want to say, but how am I going to get it across so that other people can still be on the same level and same page as me. So I think that's kind of where the two definitely began to overlap there.
Are there any, when you're developing that character for a song, are there any like standard attributes or things that you'll put together? Like one of the things you mentioned was like, I forgot what you mentioned. Yeah, I guess I'll just skip whatever that part of the question was. And what are there any like kind of recurring like attributes or categories of things that you'll try and think through to develop that character specifically for like music?
Yes. So Phantom is my artist name for those who are listening, and his, I guess, like persona is more of a darker version of myself, and that's just how it's always been. In the different, maybe he's a little more confident, more cocky. Maybe he's a little darker. He has more, demon affliction, that kind of realm stays throughout all of the music. You know, no matter if I'm collaborating or making my own, the kind of the main persona that comes off is a darker, more, you know, I guess, what is the word I'm thinking of now? It's not demonic. I don't want it to go that far, but it's just somebody who's been afflicted, you know, because I put my pain and stuff through my music, and I let out things that I don't talk about through my music. So, and it's usually more the stuff that you don't want to talk about. And that's why the Phantom character is a little on the darker side of things. And he's confident in that, and he's okay with that. You know, he fights against those demons in that. Yeah, it's more, you know, in contrast to my regular personality, is more cool, calm, and collected. I try to keep that as much as I can. But when it's time to let it out, booth is over there. You know, sometimes we call it the confession booth, and go in there, let it all out, and then I can come back to regular society and be okay.
And so, like, as you're, you know, working with this character that is Phantom, how are you identifying the parts that are you, that you want to then take to that realm, right, and exaggerate in whatever manner that you'd like, or express in whatever manner? Like, how are you identifying those parts and then determining how far from reality you pull them?
So one thing I always like to do with my music is I never try to go to a place where I can't show like a specific instance of this being my real life. So I never like to go, you know, obviously, well, I guess not obviously, for those who are listening, I don't really talk about, you know, I don't even know what an exaggeration is now, just stuff that isn't real.
Yeah.
You know, like there is a tie to all of it. I never really like to make up anything. Obviously, I'll use metaphors and similes and stuff like that, but there's always a basis of, you know, this line was said because of this part of my life, if you were to ask, kind of thing. There's always a relation there, because that's where the song comes from to begin with. That's the only way I can write is, I mean, I know other people have it their other ways, but I just personally, it's hard for me to kind of over embellish, just because then I can't get the cadence correct. So I'll look at my wall of muses, and these are the three muses that are kind of like the persona of Phantom.
And so for those listening,
yeah, go ahead.
Who are your three muses there?
Yeah. So first we have Venom. He, you know Venom from the Marvel Universe. It comes upon you, and it just gets crazy. He's my wild persona, you know. Especially I'm out at the bars and I'm clubbing. That's Phantom. That's Venom is just the wild animal of a person. And then we have the Joker, and it's a really awesome Joker photo that I got. Shout out to Matt again. And he is more of my, I would say, cunning side, the more of the diabolical things that that, you know, I do to get further in life that everybody does. It's more of the creepier side of things. And then we have myself in a skeleton form. I don't know if you can see it from there, but if you move, the picture moves, and it kind of shows like the darker side of myself, and I call that my ego. And he is the more of the cockier, confident side of things, that's, you know, not afraid of anything, and you know, is just out here. So those are the kind of the three Phantom personas that I keep. It's based off of what song I'm doing, you know. If I'm leaning on more of a part of your song, and lean more to the Venom side. If I'm leaning toward a more thoughtful song where I need you to listen to every single word, you know, we go to the Joker side. If, you know, if I can kind of go through them all, but that's basically what the point of them are.
Okay. And is there anything like, or I guess you may have just kind of answered that question a little bit there, but maybe I'm asking you to elaborate then. How do you know like which of the muses to kind of turn to? Is it more of a feeling? Is it just like more of a logical, like, well, this is like kind of a club banger, so we're gonna, you know, go towards this one? Or like, what's that process like for finding the right fit, so to speak?
Yeah. So as I said, I do like to go towards the music first. So as I'm listening to the beat, I can kind of understand where the song is going to go, then I know which kind of muse to turn towards. So like you said, if I hear the part of your beat, I know I'm going to turn towards Venom. If I hear more of a maniacal beat, I can turn towards the Joker. If I'm using more of a cockier beat where I'm going to be just talking how great I am or whatever, then I'll go towards the ego side. So that's kind of how I decide. Is first, it's always first music for me, unless I'm freestyling and I say a good line or something cool, then I'll write it down. But if I'm going to create and it's going to go from start to finish, music is the first part.
Gotcha. And then, so like on the note of lyrics and stuff, you mentioned earlier, you'll write stuff down, or you'll have ideas throughout the day that you'll jot down. What's your like note taking process, or your process for like kind of grabbing those midday ideas, or at points in time when you get struck with an idea where maybe it's not 1:35 in the morning and you're up here kind of in that mode. Like how do you capitalize on that when it's not the right moment for the idea?
So unfortunately, well, I guess other people, everybody's got their processes, but for me, I'm more of a pen and paper person. But if it's throughout the day, then my phone, I got notes and notes for days. I'm sure, lots of people do, just of specific, whether it's a music video idea, whether it's a line, whether it's a song name, whether it's some lyrics. I just got, I got them all organized in my phone based off of what the thought was. And then when it's time to, be the 1:30 o'clock in the morning, then I, if I'm stuck at all, sometimes I'm not stuck and that list kind of piles up because a new idea came when I came to sit down. But if I do get stuck, I can kind of go through that list. Oh, I need a line right now that's kind of talking about this. I'll scroll down. Or I don't know what I want to call this song. I'll scroll through my song list names. Or, maybe I want to work on a music video. What kind of ideas do I want for that? Then I'll kind of scroll through that list. And,
is there any way that you do you have a hierarchy with them, and do you is there any way that you sift through them in terms of like identifying a value to them, or is it just like in the moment, what's an idea that I need this type of idea, let me see what's out there?
Yeah, it's completely brainstorm. It's not organized enough. It's more of a timetable of, I know if I scroll too far, I'm going to find stuff that I don't like anymore because that's just not who I am as an artist. If I stay towards the top, then those are my, more recent thoughts.
Gotcha. Has there ever been an instance where you scrolled too far and you did find something that you were surprised by, that you're like, oh shit, like that might, that'll fit for this thing that I'm working on?
Yes. Yeah, man, I wish I just had an example off the top of my head, but I know for sure it's happened because there's been times where I'm like, I didn't even realize I said that line. That's clever. I'm putting it in the song. I feel good about whoever that fan was that wrote that because I don't remember that at all. Yeah, there's been many times where I've been like, oh shit, I don't know if I can cuss on here, my bad.
Oh, yeah, I don't give a shit. Yeah.
But yeah, there's been times where I was like, shit, that line was high. I got to put it in this song somewhere. And it's just always frustrating to try to figure out how to put it then to the beat because I wanted to say exactly what I wrote rather than trying to mess up words to make sure it fits in the song. But yeah, there's been times.
Have you ever been going through that and come across an idea that maybe isn't right for the context in which you're working in at that moment, but you catch it and go like, oh, that's an interesting idea I'd like to explore further? Have you ever had that happen?
Really, the only times that's happened is back in the day when albums were more of a bigger thing. I wish they would come back, but if I know I'm working on an album and I know what the album's about, then I'll hear a part. I'll be like, I know I need to write a song about that. I'm going to put this, in a specific part of my notebook so that when it gets to that song, I remember about that part. But more recently, it's been, everybody's about more of the singles at most in the EP. So it hasn't happened as often, but there have been times where I'm like, I need to make sure I remember this sort of thought. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, so let's talk a little bit about, your acting and some of that stuff. How'd you first get into acting?
That was a little bit of a crazy story. So I was living in South America at the time, actually. I had been down there for, I think about 4 or 5 months at that time. I'd stayed down there for a total of 6 months. And I had gotten to the point with my music down there. I was performing and stuff. I was also going to school. And the Chileans, I was living in Chile. The Chileans love American music, didn't know that. And they loved black people and didn't know that. And I was like, when I'm down here, this is about to eat this up. So when I was down there, I ended up meeting with a few club owners and things like that, and I was able to start performing in the clubs down there. And it got to the point to where I was the school that I was going to, I was starting to make a bigger name for myself down there than I didn't know was going to be possible. And the school that I was going to wanted me to travel with the school to these recruiting events for high schools. So I was going to college, and this college wanted to recruit high schoolers. So they would have me come to these booths where they would have their college set up, and they would, plot me there. I did not know Spanish enough to talk about the school. So my job was to take photos with all of these Chileans. So they would so I was with 2 other people. They would talk to them about the school. And then after they were done, they were like, all right, now you can get a photo with Phantom. So I would take a photo with them. And then the next person would come take another photo. I had thousands of these. I don't even know where all these photos are.
I was going to say, do you have any of them?
No, I wish I did. One of the schools, we left the school, and all the kids were waiting in the window, and they had kind of signs and all this stuff. Hey, and I'm I feel famous out here.
That's hilarious.
I was signing autographs at clubs, and people would recognize me when I was shopping on the subway. It was crazy down there. But anyways, everything
really quick. I want to kind of ask some questions about Chile. Then, what was the performance? What was it like performing in Chile versus here in the States?
Oh my gosh, Chileans know how to party. It was a whole different experience. So it was so the clubs don't close until about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And they have public transportation that's amazing, and it costs $1. So everybody stays that long because they know they can get home for $1.
Yeah.
And the clubs will keep, letting you buy drinks for as long as you want because they know everybody's taking public transportation home. It's basically another party bus on the way home. And I don't know how well they knew English, especially when I was rapping.
Mm-hmm.
It was quick. But they really got into energy. So I noticed the more you put out there on the stage, the more you interact with the crowd, the crazier it got. Whereas I feel like here in the U.S., it was more of you need to prove yourself to me before I'm going to get into your music. Especially on the independent level. It's everybody will watch you ready to hate.
Yep.
And then, once they see other people kind of getting along, then they'll kind of jump in. In Chile, it's if you came out hot, everybody was hot no matter what.
You've got the energy.
Right.
Then,
everybody's I don't care what what's about to happen, but if you hyping me up, we're going to be hype. And it was a whole different type of vibe down there. And it was amazing. I think that was your question. Was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No wrong answers. No, that's cool. That's cool. Had you been performing in the States before you went down to Chile?
Yes. Yeah. I done, and like I said, performing in Chile wasn't even a goal. I was going down there for school until I found out about the rest of the stuff. But performing in the States, I'd done that. Fountain Square, I don't know, the listeners, downtown Cincinnati area, near UC, even up near more the Mason, Westchester area, coffee shops and a couple venues up there, school talent shows, things like that.
So did you find yourself, performing things differently or making adjustments to your performance in Chile specifically? Was there anything that you noticed about the characteristic or the, certain things that you might have done differently?
I think just because I feel like music is a whole journey of development. I don't know if it's because I was in Chile or if it was because I was just trying to be a better performer.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely made it easier, when you go on stage and people are already hyped for you. It seems like you can kind of try anything.
You feed off the energy.
Yeah, you feed off each other. Whereas, in the States, it was, more new. Maybe not new because I'd been performing for a while, but it was just growing. It was trying to grow more and more and more. So when I got to Chile and it was almost easier, it was easier to grow faster.
Yeah. Was there, then I guess maybe a better way to phrase the question is, was there, where did the question go? It's in my head somewhere. Better way to phrase the question. There we go. Was there anything that, as you were developing as a performer, how do you think that energy in Chile and the performances in Chile affected your performances moving past, or after that?
Yeah, so that's kind of what kind of tied into the acting thing. Was the way I was able to perform in Chile was to be more open and be more of taking up the space that they gave me, the stage that they gave me, it was more about being less closed off, you know, especially, I mean, I know some artists' songs and some songs can even, you know, allow for that, but the music that I was performing needed to be more boisterous, and having that vibe in Chile allowed me to kind of learn how to work a stage rather than, you know, my own little space. It allowed me to kind of learn that walking back and forth while staying on beat, while maybe dancing, while maybe trying to get other people to, you know, raise their hands and give them slaps and all that kind of jazz. So I think that's kind of what it taught me, was just how to interact with the crowd more.
Interesting. Okay. And then so like you're down in Chile, you're performing on the club scene until 6 a.m., taking public transit everywhere.
Right.
How did I mean, did you take public transit home one morning and drunkenly stumble into like a theater or like an acting studio? Or how did that?
Right. So actually one of my friends, she was what is the word? Her host family. So I met a friend, her host family, one of the daughters was an actress, and I ended up getting to meet her and kind of telling her, you know, what I do and all this kind of stuff. And then she invited me and my friend and I think it was just us three. So me, my friend, and Casey out to one of the performances at one of the shows. And she was basically like, you know, this is just being an extra in the show. And at that time, I was like, I didn't really have any interest in it. I was like, oh, but, you know, it'd be kind of cool. Go to Chilean soap opera. And
so it was like, you know, filmed for like broadcast, like soap opera television.
Yeah, yeah. It was a soap opera called El Secrets and El Jardín or something like that. If anybody ever finds that, I'd be super happy. But basically, it was us visiting a concert hall. And first we go in and they bus us out to this place where we get our costume. All of this kind of stuff sounds like normal now, but they like put you in a bus. They take you to get your costume. They take you to get makeup, and all this kind of stuff was all super exciting for me. I was like, oh, this is actually really dope. Like, you know, I'm sitting here getting ready for this, playing soap opera, and then they bus us to set. We get to set, and again, like I said, the diversity down there is not huge. So they saw me get off the bus and they were like, that's a black guy, we're putting him up here. So they took me away from the other people I was with, sat me up front. Around this time, famous Chileans that I didn't know. I just figured they, you know, I had no idea who they were. So they sat me up there, and then I just got to watch them work. You know, I got to watch them do their scene, and, you know, watch the director and watch the camera guys and the sound guys. And I was just kind of taking it all in. And that's when it kind of hit me that I was like, music is being an actor. Like, you are performing, you are, you know, creating a character. And when I get back to the US, I'm going to find ways to do this. So that's what kind of hit me there. And I was like, this is a great experience. And went back and told my host mom who I was next to, and she got all excited. And I wish I knew their names, but it was a good time. It was a good time.
So was that the only acting you did in Chile?
Yeah,
it was just that one extra spot?
That one extra spot. Huh. And then it was just like, oh, this is great. All
so
right.
So then you come back to the States, and I mean, yeah, I guess what was your kind of first steps in trying to get into it here in the States?
So while luck had it, when I got back to the States, the next engineer that I was working with had he was working on film as well. He like wanted to not only do music, but wanted to do film. And then I told him, I was like, I'm interested in doing it. And I have friends that are actors. You know, being in music, you do meet other people. So I already knew people who wanted to act. And, well, I guess let me back up. So when I first got back, I did meet somebody else who worked with an agency, and he told me to come out and be in Miles Ahead was the movie. It was Don Cheadle, Ewan McGregor, and it was about Miles Davis's time. So he told me to come out to that. And after I did that, again, I, you know, loved being an extra. And I was like, you know, I kind of want to do this and, you know, start being a lead or co-lead or something like that. And then that's when my studio engineer told me that he wanted to work on a web series. And I was like, I'd love to do it. So he let me be the lead in that. And then we got as much people as we can. And that helped build my resume and helped blast off really all my whole rest of my acting career. And yeah.
So you go to Chile, you do this spot, you know, on a Chilean soap opera. You're an extra. You're in the background. Then you come back, and like the first thing out of the box you're doing is like you're a lead on an independent production. What was that process like? Like what were the things that you had to like kind of figure out how to do in the whirlwind? And like, I mean, I'm sure working on an independent production, I've only been on the post-production end of it, but like sure, you know, even there it can be kind of a whirlwind of stuff happening. Like what was that process like for you?
Really, it was very, a big learning process. It was understanding that acting is not as easy as it looks, and you have to really learn how to stay in an emotional state more than you do with music, because with music you're at least behind a mic. Mm-hmm. With acting, they see your whole body, so you need to shoot the scene the exact same way all of the time, have that same emotion and the same feel. So it was really a learning process, and luckily the people that I was working with were also learning. You're also independent actors, and they had more experience than I did, but that made it nice for me because then I could kind of lean on them, like, hey, what should I do here? What should I do here? And since I was the lead, and the reason I got the lead role is because I looked the part more than the rest of the cast. So it was like, it wasn't because of my acting skill, it was more because of it just fit. And so then it was just time for me to start learning ASAP, because if I'm going to do this, I need to, especially if I'm going to put lead on my resume, and apply for another one, people are going to be expecting a higher caliber than somebody who has just extra roles on there. So it was really about learning that. I took a master class on acting and really just kind of dove into how to be an actor.
And then, so what were some of those, like, do you remember any of the things that you picked up, like on set from some of the other actors, or things that, like, maybe you kind of figure out in the moment?
Yeah, the biggest thing I kind of noticed was the ability to stick to the script, but add, breaths, or add like a stutter, or add things that make you more real than understanding that you're just reading from a script. So it was more about learning how to trick your mannerisms into thinking this is the first time that you're saying this out loud. So that was really the biggest thing I could learn from them, was because I was easy at memorizing, and I was easy at cadence because of music, which was nice, but then you had to learn how to make yourself real life. So I think it was that note about you had to learn how to make it not sound like it was, or make it sound like it was the first time you've said it. It is kind of interesting. Have you applied that idea to your music at all in any way, and like your performances and your recording? Or yeah, I think the way I do it there is make sure I have at least a glass of water, because the voice can go out real quickly, and then it sounds like you've been doing this all day. And the other thing is to stay in it, in quotes. Just make sure that you keep this type of energy that you're coming at it with in a way, keep it in a way where you can, I guess, keep your mind space straight. So everybody kind of has their own ways of doing that, but I'm not a big one on like leaving the studio, going out, and then coming back in until a song is done. So maybe, I do that after a song is done, but until then, it's really just about staying in it,
in that moment,
right.
In the energy.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so like you've got this lead, like, you're doing some other jobs. What does, let's say you get a character, what does that creative process look like for you? Because I, as somebody who doesn't know anything about acting, other than, I guess what I could guess, right? It seems a lot of it is kind of prepared for you, right? So how do you make it your own? Like, what's your process like to kind of make it your own and become one with the character a little bit?
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of where I was going to go with it, was becoming one with the character. And the way I like to do that is kind of how I do with my lyrics, is where there's no part of it that seems embellished. The way I do it with a character is I try to think of all of the ways that I am alike of this character. So I can really just kind of get into the character's mindset of, okay, I've been through these experiences, I've, done that. Even if I haven't exactly been through those experiences, I try to just, you kind of trick your mind into getting there. Not exactly like method acting or anything, but more, for me, it's more of a relationship.
Mm.
Like I need to create this person. This person needs to be real. Kind of back to the whole, personable thing that I like about the creative process is really just kind of getting to know and really believing that this character exists, and knowing that once, I'm practicing or once I hear action, I am now that person.
Mm-hmm.
Philip does it. There's no Philip right now. This is them.
Hmm.
And being able to talk to that person or talk about that person in third person and not refer to the character as me. So, yeah.
Are there any sort of like, tricks or techniques that you'll use to, I'm trying to remember the language that you used, but tricks or techniques that you use to like kind of become one with the character or like make it real?
Yeah. I think the first thing I tend to do is whatever parts of the character that I'm not given, I fill in myself.
Mm.
So, if I don't really know the person's backstory, or I don't know the person's mannerisms, or maybe they have some sort of psychological disorder or something that I wasn't given, I like to make. And if, the director or, anybody in the production team doesn't like it, then obviously I could switch that.
Mm-hmm.
But to become one with the character, I think you need to at least pretend like the character better than anybody else. Like once the character is new, then like once you are the person who understands the character the most, you can bring the character to life the best, I think. I don't know how the A-listers feel about that answer, but that's what I think.
So yeah, to bring us back to the conversation,
Yes.
We'll have to cut. We had a bunch of hot gossip about some A-list actors that we've got the insider scoop on.
Yeah.
That we're not privy to share the details of
Right.
their life, so we're out of respect are going to cut that.
It's hush hush.
But what were we just talking about before? Do you remember what you would? Or no, that was.
So we talked about how the creative process in finding a character, because we were talking about acting.
Yes. How, when you're, making that character real, how much of the things that you're adding that aren't given to you, how much of that comes from you versus comes from the character, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a deep question. I think it would really depend on not only my mood at that time, but how strong the character already is. Like if I, say it's beyond a short or it's beyond, a featured extra role. If I'm bleeding in this, then usually I get a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's more of like the character's telling me about who he is. But if it's a short or, I am an extra role, then it's more of me creating this character and bringing it to them and kind of sharing what I've gotten to know about them. So yeah, I think that's how I would frame that.
And then as you're doing that, is there any sort of like framework or specific things that you'll think about, or like a structure that you'll try and build a character around?
Kind of depends on the film. I think for me, that whole process is a very, I want to say visceral, but I don't even know how to define that word, so I don't know if it's the right word to use. But I think it's more of it almost feels like a psychotic break. I can really understand how acting can take a toll on your brain, because as I've shared before with the whole personas thing, really for me it feels like you have to break what you are to bring this person in. And it can be taxing, especially a long filming day of trying to go back and forth, and really there's if I'm a lead on something, there's many times where I'm like, I just need to go be by myself for a little bit, because it just kind of it wears on you a little bit. But
yeah, how similar to kind of what we talked about earlier with having to block out work and set times of breaks and stuff. Like, is there any way that you kind of manage the rhythm of having to kind of break from a character, or is it just totally dictated by your schedule on set?
Yeah, I mean, it's really is. If I'm really well versed with the scene, then I can take a longer or more often break of being able to kind of step away. But most of the time, it just kind of depends on what's needed for the scene. if it's some B-roll shots, it's a lot easier to kind of just break away.
Yeah.
But if it's like, this is about to be an emotional scene and this is going to get real serious, then it's hard to kind of step away from that, even when the director does say cut, even if, like, especially if you have to like cry in a scene or something like that, then it's like, we can cut, but I need to go be by myself and stay in this energy, and stay in this, like, upsetness, because I can't go back to being Phil right now, because it's going to be hard to switch back into being the character.
Mm-hmm.
So there has definitely been times where it's just like, it just depends.
Yeah. Since we're kind of nearing the end, because I think we're coming up on like an hour.
Nope.
What are some of your influences, like, and I'm just going to intentionally leave it broad, like artistically,
my influence.
Some of the first ones that come to mind.
So I'm a big, obviously, into multiple realms of entertainment. So
don't even give me like a qualifier on the realms of entertainment.
Okay.
Just give me, like, throw out like let's say 3 to 5 of your influences.
Like people, or is it you just leaving it broad?
Leaving it broad. Yeah.
Oh man.
Independent of context, type of creation, all that. Like, what are some of your influences?
My relationship with God, for one, a huge influence in my life. Another influence would be just, how do I say it? Kind of exploring the bounds of what people say is, it can be done, it can't be done. I'm a big proponent of why, God, I wish I had the name of this person. This quote is my favorite quote. Maybe I can is it okay if I just pull it up?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. My favorite quote, and it kind of is the biggest driver for almost everything, if not everything that I do. Where is it here? Here it is. I won't read the whole thing, but it's by Marianne Williamson, and it says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God." So that's kind of like the thing I keep in my mind often is, like, I feel like people try to put you in a box and people try to put themselves in a box. And I feel like it's just be yourself. Do your dance, just create and be and enjoy, the life that you have. And nobody's really stopping you from doing as much as you can and being great. But on that other realm, my probably last influence is understanding that rest is important, which I need to get better at, because as you can see, I do a lot of things and I want to do all of the things, and I think I can do all of the things, and that is maybe to a fault, but it's just kind of understanding that other side of it is that you are still only human. So you do need to go to bed.
Well, I don't think I could have, fitted a more poignant or better way to end this. So I think we'll, we've going a little over an hour. This has been awesome, man.
Yes, it has been. Thank you.
Sick. Yeah. We'll cut it.
Awesome.
But, yeah, thank you.
Of course, man.
Wow, good job. You made it to the end. Thank you for listening this far into this podcast. I'm sure that's good for my engagement metrics or whatever the algorithm overlords are interested in. Check out the description for any show notes, links to the information about the guest or myself and this podcast. And yeah, that's it. Am I done recording these intros and outros? I think I am. And yeah, that's it. I don't really know what else to say, so just gonna leave it here.